Most people don't realize this, but we are being robbed, we are being looted, we are being bamboozled by one of the biggest industries out there that, of course, the mainstream media does not criticize. And on social media, if you do, you're ostracized and, of course, deranked in the algorithm systems, demonetized. And that's most likely why we had to do most likely a clickbait title for this video. Because if we mention what we're going to be talking about, automatically the video gets shelved underneath the YouTube algorithm and, of course, not shown to that many people. That's the reality of this fact. And predominantly what I am talking about is record military spending worldwide, which is extremely troubling, not only because of the economic numbers, but of course the larger implications and signs of trouble ahead because of this. Now, before we get into that, plus a lot more, I want to thank everyone who purchases a t-shirt on our Teespring store. The link is in the description right below, and with your purchase, we are able to sustain this media operation. We are going through a very tough time, and only because of your support are we still able to financially exist, and that's why I want to thank everyone for supporting us by simply purchasing a t-shirt, sweater, or even a sticker. Now, to me and any other rational, critically thinking person, except for, of course, the mainstream media, it is very worrisome to see a statistic where we are seeing record military spending in the world being its highest than in the last 3 decades. To me, this is a very troubling sign, not only economically, but signaling, of course, the potential for the likelihood of more conflict that may come out of this. Because just as many policy-making neoconservative chicken hawks have said before, if we're going to spend money on it, we might as well use it. And of course, if the majority of our resources and economic wealth goes into building a hammer, of course, a lot of the problems will start looking like nails. Now, of course, this is a chart that we're looking at right here with how much the United States spends compared to the world in 2015. Those numbers shifted, but most importantly, all of these numbers went up for the exception of some countries, including Russia, which is an interesting geopolitical development, which we're going to be talking about in just a little bit. Now, it's important to note here, not only is U.S. military spending up for the first time in 7 years, this mainly because of the kind of pro-military slogans and pro-defense spending by, of course, Donald Trump, spending a calculated $1.8 trillion overall last year, and still, Donald Trump is going to tell you the military needs more money. Now, of course, the second country to challenge the United States is, of course, China. That from 2019 has increased their military spending from 83%, which, of course, brings it to second place ahead of Saudi Arabia, India, which of course is also not only, quote, modernizing its armies, but also preparing for geopolitical conflicts. Then right after that is, of course, France. And to me, this is absolute insanity, absolute idiocracy. And a lot of this is fueled by, of course, pro-war, pro-lobbyists from the military-industrial complex think tanks that, of course, push division, fear-mongering, against the global powers, against each other for, of course, their pure benefit and profit in the world. Now, of course, there are real, actual tensions between these world powers, as, of course, China predominantly is looking to be a global world power. And of course, this sets up the perfect Thucydides trap, which means an existing power that is threatened by a power that is up and coming and rising on the global stage will eventually most likely lead to conflict. There's a reality in that situation that cannot be ignored when looking at China on the world stage. But I do believe there's a very strong argument to make here, especially when we look at Russia and, of course, the propaganda surrounding that country. I do believe there's a good argument to make here that a lot of the amped up tension, pressure, and breakdown of diplomatic relations between world powers like the US and Russia have been specifically pushed and manipulated for the goal of a few individuals for political power or financial power. And I do believe that is the case, in my opinion, with what happened recently between the United States and Russia. But what's really interesting is that even though the United States establishment elitist media likes to paint Russia as the main villain and kind of mainly ignoring China, and geopolitically, it's important to understand here that Russia is in no longer the top 5 countries with the largest defense spending. We also have to recognize that its economy is smaller than Canada's. It's also smaller than Italy's. But on the world stage, it is the second larger exporter of weapons. Now, when we specifically look at the 5 top countries that are spending more and more and more on its military, you could see how they are fueling their problem with, of course, what many people see as a potential underlying conflict that could happen. China with, of course, the United States, with China, of course, wanting to expand its global hegemonic power, its economic might, and experiencing what many people are calling their own kind of unique industrial revolution that is happening in that country. Below the United States is China, but then below that is, of course, Saudi Arabia, that is already involved in small proxy wars against its main geopolitical enemy being Shia, Iran, mainly against the Sunni Saudi Arabian Empire. India, geopolitically, is also not only threatened by China, but also Pakistan, which has been enabled as a nuclear power, where even just a few weeks ago, the countries threatened each other with mutually assured annihilation over, of course, a border dispute. And then number 5, of course, is France, which was involved in major NATO operations, including the Libyan operation, and still serves mainly as a kind of backbone to Europe and the United States being a part of NATO. Now, it's really interesting. If you look at the top countries spending the most amount of money, you see a lot of other troubles, a lot of other problems geopolitically with their countries that could exemplify on why they're spending so much money on military. Specifically, the United States being, what, $22 trillion now in debt? China, of course, having their own economic issues and also a population crisis that, of course, they're having very significant troubles dealing with, which will lead to, of course, more economic woes for that country, which most likely will also stop their ambitions as being the world hegemonic power. And then third, of course, is Saudi Arabia, which also is an empire in decline, mainly because of where it is geopolitically positioned and, of course, its shortage of resources, which, of course, will run out very soon and create a very difficult economic situation on the world stage as, of course, less and less people are using Saudi oil and are either fracking or looking at other sources of energy. I would argue that the top 3 countries in military spending in the world are in significant trouble, which should leave a lot of people to worry, since historically speaking, many empires in decline during their last death throes look towards war as a way to not face any economic responsibility or to face the reality of an uncertain situation, which doesn't play favorably towards their larger power aspirations. And as I have been saying for years, it is a mistake for the United States to only mainly just see Russia as an enemy here, and internationally trying to push a U.S. petrodollar will only cause more economic chaos in the long term. And of course, we are doing all of this, including starting conflicts, getting involved in conflicts, selling arms to conflicts, overthrowing leaders all over the world, all in the guise of democracy and security, which I believe a lot of people on the world stage know that this is not so. And just like Dwight D. Eisenhower, a famous U.S. Army general and former U.S. president, said, quote, "We will bankrupt ourselves in the vain search for absolute security." Since, of course, there is no absolute security, and I would even argue very strongly and confidently that the latest geopolitical actions by the United States have made not only the United States, but the world a lot less secure. It was surely done for power, done for the petrodollar, done for profit, done for immoral ways that have created a horrendous situation that right now, the world, in the place that it is right now, the majority of our currency, of our wealth, of out of the things we create are made to destroy the life that we have here. And just like as Dwight D. Eisenhower said before, quote, "Every gun that is made, every warship launched, every rocket fired signifies in the final sense a theft from those who hunger and who are not fed, those who are cold and are not clothed. This world in arms is not spending money alone. It is spending the sweat of its laborers, the genius of its scientists, the hopes of its children. This is not a way of life at all in any true sense. Under the cloud of war, it is humanity hanging on a cross of iron. And that's a quote that should be remembered every single time, whether it's George W. Bush, Barack Obama, or Donald Trump. Keep increasing the military budget, indebting this country, destroying our economic future, and creating more chaos on the world from a senseless, brutal force that could be usurped, that could be different with diplomacy, proper communication, and people helping each other instead of threatening to bomb the smithereens out of each other. Maybe I'm just stupidly optimistic. Or maybe I'm right on the money. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section below. I'd love to hear your feedback and what you guys think about these kind of larger, expansive ideas that I'm bringing out there. Because absolutely, this makes no sense to me at all. And in my opinion, in a just world, it shouldn't make sense to anyone. This is absolutely backwards. This is absolutely insane. And I do believe there are other ways to address the bigger problems out there, the bigger geopolitical situations out there, other than, of course, seeing every problem as a nail. Thank you again so much for watching, so much for participating in independent media. Again, hey, check out some of the t-shirts. We make fun of CNN, we make fun of Fox News, we make fun of all of them, because we are not left, we are not right. We simply stand by ideas and virtues of liberty, of freedom, of peace. That's what we stand for here as an independent media, ignore the pillow here, as an independent media organization that continues to be demonetized, downranked in the algorithm, and just forgotten by absolute idiots who want to obsess about triggering people or their emotions or feminazis or the commie Nazi, whatever the hell you're talking about. It's nonsense, well, at least in my opinion. And if you agree with me, share this video. Thank you again so much for watching. Stay tuned for more here on wearechange.org.